Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bootstrap Founder. Today, I'm talking to Laura Elizabeth. She co-hosts the Non-Tech Founders podcast and runs several products as a non-technical founder. We'll talk about outsourcing, building trust, and building an audience around your business. Here's Laura. So you're co-hosting the Non-Tech Founders podcast, and that is something that I find amazing because in our developer-centric indie hackers community, I think there are far too few voices for the non-technical founders. And I'm glad you're doing this, and I'm glad you're talking about these topics. Is it hard for a non-technical founder to even communicate to technical people? How do you find this? Has this been something that has been troubling you before that caused you to start this podcast?
Sort of yes and no. So I feel like most people I know in this space are developers, and I don't know if that's just luck or if that's just how it is, or if there's just more developers who are, building software products, more indie kind of software products. So, and there wasn't really many people like me who didn't have that technical knowledge that was building something. So my friend Nathan, I think we became friends because we're like the only people that we know who aren't developers doing something like this. So we thought, presumably there are other people who aren't developers that want to do what we're doing. So it would be really good to be able to talk to them. But also, I feel like it's really helpful to developers because we're not going to be talking about things that typical developer podcasts are going to be talking about. We're not going to be focusing on the technology as such and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to be talking more about marketing and design and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like it could speak to a lot of different people. It's really early days with it though, so it's hard to know. I feel like we're still finding our feet with it, but I'm optimistic.
Well, and I think you can be, because I listened to the podcast, a couple episodes, and it's really nice. It's actually quite a breath of fresh air in a field where people quite quickly derail into these kind of tech stack conversations where they are, JavaScript, Python, whatnot, right? Where you, as a listener, if you're technical, it's not even interesting for technical people to listen to because it's just, these kind of infights between technologists where they have their preferences and they just argue pointlessly about the benefits of a particular technology, where all the benefits of this tech are usually in how you apply it to the problem and if it fits, right? So it's these weird kind of almost religion style conversations that people are having. And I found none of these in the Non-Tech Founders podcast. So I'm really, really glad that you're doing this. Do you feel this is benefiting you on a business level to have somebody to talk to that is coming from the same background as you are?
Yeah, I think so. I think I tend to, I'm very solo in what I do. So I don't talk to many people, to be honest, day to day. And it's actually been really nice being able to speak to someone every week. So the episodes come out every 2 weeks, but we talk every week. So we've got a bit of a backlog. About what's going on and what's going on with him, what's going on with me. And I find it's quite motivating because, well, first off, because I get new ideas. So he's given me some ideas of things that I've been noodling around with in my head. But secondly, there's the accountability aspect. So if I show up every single week with the same problem that I'm having over and over again and I haven't fixed it yet, it's a little bit embarrassing. So it kind of pushes me to have a different update. Because I'm thinking about, what am I going to update this week? Well, I actually haven't done anything different. And then it makes me think, well, why haven't I? What have I actually been doing? And stuff like that. So I do think it's helpful. It's kind of like a mastermind in a way.
Yeah, it's an interesting accountability setup, right? You kind of force yourself to show up and you force yourself to have something to provide. It kind of reminds me of, and that's one thing that I see a lot in solopreneurs, imitating things that they would do in a bigger team or building structures that are similar to what they would be doing if they were employed. If you have any programming environment, you have these sprint meetings and you have retrospectives where you look into what you've done, what you're going to be doing. You're going to estimate how long it will take. You don't really have that if you're a solopreneur, right? Or in any regard, if you run your own business, you have nobody that will tell you how long this should be taking other than yourself. So it's really nice to have somebody to talk to about this. I've seen this work for a lot of people. That is really interesting. Do you, with Nathan being a non-technical founder as well, do you sometimes wish there would be more technical insight into your stuff? I'm not saying this is a bad idea for one non-tech founder to talk to another non-tech founder, but do you get some kind of technical insight from other sources into your, the decision-making process that you have to be doing for your business?
Yeah, so I'm quite lucky. So my husband's a developer. And he has his own software stuff. So if I ever have a question, I can go to him. But I also have a developer who obviously builds client portals. So my product is it's a WordPress plugin. I don't build it myself because I can't. So I have a developer who's been with me from the start. And she's great. I really feel like I just struck gold with her because she thinks of everything. I go to her if I have any things that I can't figure out, and she always has, in my opinion, the correct answer. So I've got those two people, which is quite good. And also my audience is very developer heavy. So I also teach a design course for developers, and I got to know a few people on the course. And I know that if I ever really needed some different opinions, I could go there. I tend not to though, because I find if I ask a developer or multiple developers the same question, they're going to give me completely different answers, and I'm going to get so confused. I like to just ask one person a question and just get feedback that way, because anytime I've let it out to a few different developers, kind of like what we were talking about earlier, they tend to, there may be a bit of fighting internally, which is the right way. Oh no, he's so stupid. Should be this way. And because I don't know, so I'm like, oh gosh, who do I go with? And it gets a bit overwhelming. So I tend to just take the tech stuff and I don't think about it, to be honest, because I'm lucky because I can do that because I've got such a good developer on my team already.
That is really cool. Well, I'm really happy for you to have found this person, because I think that is hard. I mean, it's not hard to find a developer, and it's probably not even hard to find a good developer, but finding a developer that is good and you can trust, that makes decisions not because they think they're right, but because they understand they're good for you, that's a pretty lucky situation to be in. How did you develop that trust with her? Because I feel that is probably the hardest part for any tech, non-tech relationship, is to establish this baseline trust. How did that work for you?
Yeah, so I hired her back when, I think 5 or 6 years ago, when Client Portal was just an idea and I needed someone to develop the product. And I put some feelers out, said what I was looking for. I got loads of responses. I got prices, I got everything. But she was the first one who connected with me more personally and had said, oh, hey, I've actually been following you for quite a while. I really like this, and this that you've done. And she, you could tell that she knew a little bit about me, and she wasn't just jumping to the project and what she would do specifically. And there was just something about that I thought, okay, that's just a bit different. So you always remember the people that are a bit different. And my gut just told me just to go with her. And what I really like about her is that she doesn't jump on new things too quickly. So she doesn't always want to change everything. She's somewhat cautious. If something big is kind of coming, she will research it and only do it with Client Portal if she feels like it's at a point where it's stable enough and it's not going to cause any problems. Some developers I know can be a bit quick to jump from thing to thing to thing, and then they have to backtrack, and it's just a bit messy and confusing. That works with me. I think some people might like that, but it was just, to be honest, with hiring her, it was honestly a bit of luck. I just trusted my gut and it was right. And it's just been that way ever since. So I feel like it was a little bit of a fluke in that respect. I don't know if I could recreate it.
Yeah, it sounds hard to kind of generalize this as advice for people. But where did you find her? Was there a particular place you went to look for her?
we were both in a Slack group for freelancers, because before I did Client Portal, I ran a service-based business. And yeah, we were both in this same Slack group, and I posted the job in there. And yeah, I found her through that. So I didn't do any job boards or anything like that. If I were to do it again today, I'd probably do a similar thing, to be honest, and just see what networks I'm currently part of and reach out there and see what comes back.
I had the exact same experience, like from a business owner perspective. Like I'm a software engineer, right? So I was in an Elixir, which is a programming language, Slack group somewhere. And when we sold our business, my girlfriend and I, Feedback Panda, the business that we built together and then sold a couple of years ago, we needed to find a replacement for both of our roles. Right? She was the CEO of the business, so she needed to find somebody to take over her responsibilities, and she found someone. And I needed to find a technical person to take over mine. And I went to my Slack group, my Elixir Slack, and there were a couple guys. Well, yeah, it was actually just a couple guys. So we have the whole gender imbalance thing there. But, it was just a couple people in the group that were interested because I posted the job there first, and we had a conversation with like 10 of them, and the one that was the best match ended up to be from that Slack group as well. So what this tells me, your experience now and my experience, or I guess your experience was prior to mine, but both of them suggest to me that if you want to find the right people to hire you and you want to find the right people to hire, just be in communities where people care about the stuff that they do, right?
Yeah,
of sounds a lot
exactly.
like an audience-centric approach to finding clients, customers, or employees.
Yeah, because if you're both a member of the same community, you're automatically going to have something in common, whether it's ideologies or whatever that specific community brings and why you chose it and why you participate in that one over other ones. You might not even know the reasons yourself, but you're just going to naturally prefer some to others. So there's already a bit of similarities there, which you don't get when you try marketplaces like Upwork or something like that.
Yeah, that's true. There's this kind of pre-established, like, lukewarm connection, right? You may not have chatted much, but you know each other. You know that you're both in there. You have some sort of alignment to begin with. It's kind of like at a party when you want to talk to somebody and they're standing next to your friend. You have a prior connection, so that makes it much easier to just engage each other. Yeah, that is so cool. And it strikes me as something that I always had trouble with. That the first thing that you did was to hire somebody. Look for somebody to do work for you that you don't or were not at that point capable of doing yourself. Because in my engineering mindset, I could do everything. That's kind of what we've been taught in school and university and stuff, or even just on the job that we were doing, what I was doing when I started in the industry as a coder. You can learn everything. Just try to do everything. That is not the same for a non-technical founder, I would assume. So did you make that choice like initially from the beginning that you would hire as soon as possible, or did you dabble in, I don't know, no code or trying to do some stuff for yourself to set up the thing that you wanted to build?
Yeah, so back then I don't know if no code was really much of a thing. So it was, I feel like it's fairly new, so that wasn't an option. But I think even if it was, well, I don't know. To be honest, I think if I could have maybe got something together myself, I probably would have done it that way as well, with the same mentality. Well, if I can do it, I should do it. I get to learn about it. It's my product. No one else will understand it the way I do, and all that kind of stuff. In the same way, I'm a designer by trade, and I don't hire designers because I can do it myself. Maybe I should hire designers, but it would be really hard. It would be so difficult because I would want it done this way, and if a designer does it slightly differently, I'd think, well, why are you doing it that way? That's clearly wrong. I'm clearly right. So I would have not hired if I could have done this myself. But looking back, I'm so glad I did, or I'm so glad I had to, because I think for a non-technical founder, it's a lot harder to get started because you need a bit of investment, whether it's, something like Tiny Seed, or whether you do what I did, which is I pre-sold the product, kind of like a Kickstarter type thing. And you have the risk of having to pay someone to build it, which is kind of scary. But once you've done that, and once you've got some traction, and once it's going, it's really nice not having to worry about the development of the product and not have to worry about support tickets and bugs and all that kind of stuff, because that I think would be the problem for me. If I could have cobbled something together myself, when someone had a problem, I wouldn't know how to help them. And it's really nice. I can I can go away and do, my marketing stuff, my design stuff, or whatever else I'm doing. And I know that the product is being constantly worked on. And anyone who has a support ticket, I know that it's going to be taken care of and I don't have to think about it. And I don't think I'd have been able to build Client Portal to where it is now if I was doing all of that myself, because there's just not enough hours in the day. And the other thing is I would have added so many more features than it has right now, which isn't a good thing.
Yeah. Oh no, that's a problem.
Yeah. There's so many things that I'm tempted to do. And I'm like, well, I can't, so I don't. And that's actually a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, that is so nice that you have the separation of concerns, like even separation of capacity and capability. That is super helpful. I think that is the bane of all indie hackers, is their capacity to do everything kind of well enough. There's no limitation really. And no code probably makes this even worse for people who, let's just slap this Zapier integration in there as well. And then it becomes this convoluted mess of a Frankenstein kind of product. Yeah, interesting that your lack of immediate capacity to do it kept the product straightforward and specific. Have you since you started this whole thing, have you developed an interest in being able to do this, or are you perfectly fine with somebody else doing this for you forever?
I am perfectly fine with somebody else doing it. I think
so cool.
I honestly think it's just the best thing for me, because I need to focus on the marketing side more than anything and talking to customers. I do have someone who handles my support, but I keep an eye on the inbox and just so I know like what people are thinking and all that kind of stuff. And that is a full-time job in itself. It's a lot of work. And I don't. At one point I did think, gosh, and sometimes I still do. I get these moments where I think, I might think of like a new idea of something that might be really cool to build. And it kind of sucks that I can't just do it, just to throw it out there and see if something sticks. That would be a really nice superpower to have if I could keep this knowledge that, okay, once you've just built the MVP and you've seen if it's and you've got an idea whether it's going to grow, then get rid of doing the development of it and get rid of doing the support as quickly as possible. If I could do that, then I would say, yes, I would like the superpower of being a developer. I don't trust myself, though, because I think I just want to keep doing it all myself.
Yeah, it's quite alluring. It is really a superpower, I feel. It kind of, to me, being able to do everything is both awesome and frightening. Like both definitions of the word awesome, right? That is the good and the bad kind. Because if you are able of doing it, you kind of have to. Like it doesn't make fiscal sense to outsource this to somebody else if it just takes an hour of your time, right? It's just like that's a problem. Very interesting. I'm super impressed by the fact that you can stay like this. You can say, nope, that's not for me. I'm a designer. I do these things well. I don't need to do everything, because I'm certainly not the same way. And I always had trouble delegating work to somebody else that I could either do myself or could learn how to do myself or thought I could learn, How do you deal with this? Because you were just saying you wouldn't hire a designer. And I find this very relatable, because that's how I felt for the longest time in terms of hiring a developer. Do you struggle with this right now? Are you at a point where you should be hiring somebody else but are not?
Yeah, so I've sort of had a little bit of a middle ground with this, and I've been using one of those unlimited design services. And I think the one I use is ManyPixels. And basically what they do is so I give them, if I need something, I give them the content and what I need, and they've got all my brand assets there, and they pull together something. And it's never honestly that polished. Like it's not, I wouldn't really put it out there without me doing it. But I then take that and I tweak it and I make it more polished. And that's sort of working quite well for me, because it just takes a bit of the time away from me designing. It just gets the blank canvas thing out of the way, and I can tweak it, I can polish it and do all that. But that said, I do wonder if it makes sense for me to even be doing that. I don't know. I can't imagine. I can't imagine hiring a designer. I think it would be really hard to do. And I love designing as well, which is probably like you love doing all the different things that you do. It's not like it's a slog, it's enjoyable. And I love it when I get a day where I can just design. It's really nice. I've recently redone the client portal website, and I get so much joy every time I look at it now, because I'm like, I did that and I'm really proud of it and it looks really good, and it took a really long time, and I don't know how I'd feel if someone else did it. But yeah, I don't know. It's a difficult question because I don't know the answer to it.
Yeah. Oh, I wish I knew the answer, or anybody knew the answer to this, but I think it's really just a matter of like either experimenting with like delegating parts of it, or experimenting with different modes of it, because I very much relate to this. Like for this podcast in particular, I still do all the editing myself. I do all the captioning myself if there is stuff to caption, all the kind of the work on the administrative stuff. And as much as it's kind of boring to do these things, I still find a lot of enjoyment in this, because you start with just a video and you end up with a polished or somewhat polished video, and an accessibility angle to it where people can read it so they don't have to listen, and all of these things. That's wonderful, and I love doing this. And I have such a hard time giving this to somebody else, because even I tried this a couple times before. I gave this stuff to somebody else, and there were mistakes in there, mistakes that I wouldn't make. And I think you can relate to this as a designer, right? You see, that white space over there, that's just a little bit off, right? This is just a couple pixels or whatever it might be, but you see it, you feel it, because you know what it should be like. And delegating with margin for error seems so hard. Like, do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I think the hard part is you want to hire someone who's going to treat the podcast like it's their own podcast, like it's their face and their voice on it, and they're the ones that are promoting it. So if they were doing it for themselves, then they maybe wouldn't make those mistakes. But because they're doing it for someone else, they're like, oh, that's good enough. They might not notice, or something like that. So when you're doing it yourself, you put so much more care and time and all this stuff into it. And I think that's what makes the biggest difference, because it's so frustrating when you do hire something out and you get it back and you then have to go through and say, can you change this? Can you change that? Can you change that? I've noticed this, I've noticed that. And you're frustrated because you think, how have you not noticed it? You surely must have. And I think, I think that's really hard. It's sort of like we had someone come round. We wanted to get some shelves in our living room made, and we had a carpenter come round and have a look, and he was asking us, what do you want? Do you want this? Or just basically saying, what do you want? And we were saying we weren't really sure, because we were like, would this type of shelf look good? Should it be a floating shelf? Should it not be? And he was like, whatever you want, just do what you want. What do you want? And we said, well, if it was your house, what would you do? Like, you're the professional, you see this all the time, you should know everything about shelves, and advise me on what kind of shelves, due to looking at our space and what we've said we wanted, what should we do? But he wouldn't do that. And I find that with other people you hire as well. You want them to know everything about editing a podcast and be able to do all those things that you would do yourself. But that's the difficult part, and so you can find those people. Like, I think my developer is that person. I have a support person now who, I've gone through loads of support people, and the one I have now is just really thorough, way more thorough than actually I was. And I'm so happy with it. So I think it's worth persevering with delegating, because it really is important, because you can only get so far doing everything yourself. And you never know what unexpected things might crop up in your life. So you might get sick, for example. You might want to go on holiday. You might get burnt out. Anything could happen. And you want to know that's not the time that you want to be hiring. So you want to know that you've got enough in place that if any of those things should happen, everything will be okay. So I do think it's worth persevering with, if possible. But it's hard. It's the hardest thing I've done.
Do you have any kind of standard operating procedures, some kind of internal documentation that makes this kind of process easier once you have something to delegate to people?
Sort of. I've tried being super, like, documenting everything, and sometimes that backfires on me, because if you're really thorough with your documentation, then sometimes the people you hire will follow that to a T, but they won't think for themselves at any point, because they're so used to getting everything laid out for them. And so then if something crops up that is slightly out of what was written, they'll just say, ask you, and you'll have to, write more documentation or something like that. So I found if you're too thorough with that, it can backfire. So what I try to do now is I try to get the person I delegate to create their own documentation for them. So I'll say, you can use Trello or a Google Doc or whatever you want, but I have to also be able to see it, and just put this in whatever format works for you. And that's part of their job. I'll also do things to help, like I'm really good with my email. I do a lot of saved replies. So I use Help Scout, and you can just have the little templated replies for a lot of the common questions. I write things down a lot. I take notes. It's nothing fancy, honestly. It's like a Google spreadsheet, and it looks hideous. It's horrible, but you can find things in it. And that's another thing that I do to help. But yeah, I'm not overly processed with it at this point.
Yeah, I guess that's also something you need to establish. And I've been in our software as a service business, we established that at some point because we were just two people, my girlfriend and I, running the thing. We had a couple outside people doing content for the blog and stuff, but we had nobody inside the business. We had no customer service people. Like, that was us. And at the end was probably 5,000 customers at the same time before we sold. That was a lot of work. So we had to establish this internal process, which then surprisingly, but also in a very good way, made selling the business way easier because everything was already in place. Do you, and that's kind of what I wonder, like, do you intend to establish this over time, or are you just going to go with what works for people, whatever they need?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have more in place now than I did before. And I would honestly love to get to the stage where I had something in place. So if I hired someone, I could onboard them really well and they could have everything they need. I would absolutely love that. I don't feel like I'm very close to having that, in all honesty. But I sort of get by. Whether I will or not, I don't know, because I quite like being a small business. I don't have many plans to grow too big. So these people that I'm talking about that I hired, they're not actually my employees. They're all contractors, which is the way I prefer it personally. So I don't know. I might just keep it as it is. And because the problem is sometimes when I've gone in and I've maybe used a new tool or something, I've spent so much time and it's not actually been worth it. And I still go back to just the really basic stuff that works but isn't pretty, and it works for me. But
I just had this thought too, like when you were talking about your hideous Google spreadsheet. It's like my thought was, oh, there's probably a software as a service business out there doing exactly this for you. But then I was like, come on, like, are you going to integrate yet another solution into an existing workflow? Like, is that important to you? Apparently not. So at least not at this point. That's the thing. And I like what you were saying because of the it's kind of spicy if you think about it. The whole, I want to keep it small. That's why I don't put a lot of structure into it. That's how I hear it. It's not what you necessarily said, but it's kind of the underlying, the undercurrent of this phrase that you just said. And I wonder, do you think this might be a self-limiting thought here, that small means unorganized?
Yeah, quite possibly. It's probably an excuse, to be honest, more than anything. But yeah, I don't know. There it is. I do struggle with time at the moment, and so I have like way too many things going on. I think we were talking about it on Twitter earlier, but yeah, too much things going on. And I actually love being organized. Usually, I'm usually quite an organized person, like in my personal life. And well, actually, compared to some people, I am super organized. But yeah, I think it probably is a bit self-limiting. There's no reason I couldn't be a small business that just runs things really smoothly. And I think, to be honest, if I ever wanted to get to the stage, which I do, where I would be doing even less in my business and delegating more, I think I do need to have some more processes and some more just well-maintained documentation in place, When
Yeah,
that'll happen,
you and me
though,
both.
I'm not sure.
That I feel the exact same way. Like, because I didn't want to put you on the spot. It's more or less I feel the same way. And I had these thoughts, and I just wanted to share them with you because I feel that I'm limiting myself as well. Because I also want a lifestyle business, right? And lifestyle doesn't necessarily mean unorganized. Lifestyle just means the way I want it. And if I want it small yet well organized, that is also a lifestyle business. And I think that it would be perfectly fine, right? It's just kind of how we phrase things, how we talk about things is how they end up being in reality. So yeah, I just wanted to share my own reservations. It's comforting to know that I'm not the only one having these kind of issues, to be honest.
Definitely not. And it always feels like you are the only one. It seems like everyone else is way more put together. But then I hear people talk to me and they say, gosh, you're so organized. How do you manage it? And I'm thinking, oh, I don't know.
What?
Spend a day with me. You'll see.
Yeah.
But okay.
I think this is becoming more and more obvious as people are building in public and sharing their journeys, because you can see kind of that there are cracks in the veneer of everything is going great, which there should be. There should not be this veneer, right? There shouldn't be just the surface anyway. But it's nice to see that more and more people choose to be more vulnerable and showing mistakes that they make, and the fact that they are, to a certain degree, not optimally running their business. It's just reality for everyone out there, which is why it's kind of why I'm putting this into this conversation so much, because I feel if people notice that, oh yeah, everyone is struggling, then their struggle becomes less of a, aimless wandering and more of, okay, this is apparently how it is. Fine, let's just keep doing what we're doing, right? Let's just keep going. Let's just keep trying to find a solution to this. Even if it's an ugly Google spreadsheet or just a Notion document that you kind of share back and forth and people edit and comment. If that's enough for you at this point, then that's perfectly fine, right? Like, you seem to be running a business that is doing well enough, and mine is doing good too. So it can't be that bad. It's kind of how I feel.
Yeah.
It's just balances the perception out there.
Yeah, and I do speak to a lot of people actually who are trying to start their own businesses, and sometimes being super organized and polished, I would say, is their fallback, because they're putting everything together in their business as if they're running a much bigger company than they are, when bear in mind they haven't started yet. So all these things, you're not in a big software company. You don't need to do like we were talking about, the stand-up meetings and all the things that people in those companies do, but they're documenting it as if they are. And I can see their thought process in the sense that, well, it's good to do it as you go, because when you need it, it's going to be there, which I think is definitely very true. But I think you can take it a little bit too far, because as well, when your business starts to grow, your processes will just naturally change, because you'll realize that you had it wrong, or you need to do this. Your ticketing system is in this software and that doesn't work for you because of XYZ. So you need to move it to something that will work for you, that you could never have known beforehand. So I think when you start out, if you can be like as nimble as possible and open to change, and maybe move a little bit faster, but then just try to somehow, don't know how, just document the things that you are not going to change. And I think that's easier said than done. I'm making it sound really easy, but it's not. But I do see a lot of people get stuck trying to perfect their processes before they move forward.
Yeah, it's some kind of procrastination, right, at this point too.
Yeah,
because you're just like, you're building process, but you're not building. So a little bit of a problem there. I find one approach that I've found work for me is to think of the process of how I deal with process as a process in itself. Like, how am I going to approach documentation, right? Like, am I going to document everything, or is just a couple of bullet points and a link enough for now? And over time, with more people involved, well, it's not enough anymore. So I have to change my meta process, and that trickles down into the rest of all the documentation that you have. As you start like making things more approachable for people who you need to onboard, or for other people who you give little tiny tasks that give them the opportunity to have a step-by-step for their specific task. But the general thing is still nebulous because it's more for me than for them. Like, you change your process of how you deal with process over time. again, sounds easy, but change, what does that mean, right? Like, what is changing a process? So in the end, it's a very unique thing, very specific to your unique situation that you're in. So yeah, I guess I don't have advice here either. It's just, I like your nimble first approach because it just means you have more time to spend on actually doing the experiments that lead to more business success down the line, instead of just wasting it documenting.
Yeah, exactly. It's a difficult balance for sure.
Yeah, like anything in business, right? That the fact that you don't know the outcome before you see the outcome with everything you do, that kind of makes it hard. And that's, I think, why people retract into this, let's do the documentation first, because that's something tangible. You know that in the end, you're going to end up with documentation and you end up with really nice looking stuff. So you don't have to face the uncertainty of doing things that you're not sure if they're going to work or not. And I think that for me, and I don't want to like steal anything away from you here, but for me, that's why I don't hire, because I don't know. I'm so afraid that there might be a mistake somewhere in me hiring a person that I'm not even going to try and see if there might not be a mistake down the line. I think that's it's kind of why I'm so reluctant here.
Yeah, that is really tough. It's the hardest thing, because you have to, like you said about you changing the process, but you have to time it right. You have to change it before you need to change it, if that makes any sense. So if you are at the point where you've hired someone but you don't have the things in place to hire them, which I've done before. I've hired someone when I've been desperate and I didn't have the processes in place, and I thought, well, I'm going to do the processes now that I've hired them. I'm going to start them, and it didn't work. It was probably my worst hire that I've ever had, because I hadn't done it before. So I needed to have done it just a little bit earlier, but not too early, because if I did it too early, then half the things would have changed and I'd have been redoing it. So it's just, yeah, it's definitely the hardest thing. And I think especially if you're solo, it's even harder, because you've got no one to bounce those ideas off, and you've got no one to give you different advice. And, you know, we were talking earlier about having the mastermind, which is actually a podcast, but just having someone to talk to about these things, I think, is really helpful, because they can maybe advise you, okay, I think you're not hiring because XYZ, and I think you should do this because reason. And then, yeah, it kind of gives you that extra push that you need.
I think it's, like I said, a great accountability tool. And I think the wonderful thing about a podcast is that you are doing this in front of other people, right? So if the potential, not just to have somebody be your sounding board for ideas, or your mirror if you need them to be, or, you know, the feedback generator that you need at that point to get motivation to do something, but you're also building an audience at the same time. And you're building an audience from a place of authenticity and genuine vulnerability, because everything you talk about where you're not sure gives people insight into your decision-making process and how you approach not just winning, but how you approach building, right? How you approach experimenting. And that I feel builds such connection with people. And you've been an audience builder for a while, right? It's not the first time you dabble in creating a bigger audience around yourself. So let's kind of talk about that, because I think audience building is on everybody's mind, right? Everybody and their dog is building an audience at that point, almost quite literally if you go to Instagram. So how has that been a choice that you consciously made when you went into the Non-Tech Founders podcast with Nathan, to build an audience around that particular aspect of yours?
So for me, it wasn't so much. I think for Nathan, it was more because he's starting more from scratch. So he went away for a while and now he's building his audience again. I feel like I have an audience that I'm, pretty okay with. It's growing steadily. For me, the reason that I'm doing it is a lot of it, honestly, for fun, because I've always wanted to do a podcast and to see where it takes us. If the audience growth happens, which I hope it does, that can only be a benefit. But yeah, I basically started it more just because I wanted to, and it seemed like a good idea. But yeah, audience building is something that that's how I got my start, really, because I was a freelancer before, but I didn't really like freelancing that much, because I didn't like the exchanging time for money kind of thing. I didn't really feel like I had a lifestyle business, which is what I wanted. And I was looking at people with products and courses and all that stuff, and I thought that looks more like what I want to do. But I didn't have anything to sell. And I always knew that even if I did have something to sell, who would I sell it to? So to me, building an audience first was the more logical step. And you get people who disagree with that. Some people agree with it, say audience first, absolutely. Some people say product first, absolutely. I think you can do kind of either. If you've got a great product idea or a great product or something to sell, definitely start with that and build your audience. If you don't, I don't think there's any harm in building your audience first. The way I chose my audience was pretty simple. I mostly worked with developers, and I felt like I could talk to them quite well. I enjoyed talking to them. I had lots of developers around me, and I knew what struggles they had. So I knew that it was going to be around that. So I just went on lots of different podcasts that were targeting developers. I did guest posts, mostly about design because that's what I knew about. And it was more like just to see where it would take me while I was doing my freelancing on the side. And that was really valuable because I never really asked people what they wanted, because I don't necessarily think that's the right way to go about things. And also it's not their job to tell me what they want. It's my job to figure out what they could need. But I'd always really analyze the things that they were saying to me and try to figure out where I could help. And then I started doing a design course for developers, and Client Portal ended up being this thing on the side that just came out of nowhere that I'd made for myself, that my audience, I sort of shared it with my audience without any intention to sell it. And they were like, oh, wait, this is exactly what I need. And I thought, oh, wow, okay, that was a bit of a stroke of luck. But if I hadn't had that audience already, I wouldn't have known that, and I wouldn't have ended up selling Client Portal. So all these things kind of happen, and it seems like a lot of luck involved. And I always think that, wow, I got really lucky with this. And I say it all the time. Oh, I got really lucky with that. But I was doing things to increase the likelihood of that luck happening. So I was always focused on building an audience. And if I were to go back, I think I would do the same again, and just try to build an audience as soon as possible.
Very much agreed. And I love that you bring up this opportunity surface, that the concept of providing the fertile ground for luck to strike. That is something you can work on, right? You can't work on where the luck is going to strike or when it's going to strike, but you can open up the opportunities by just being present, by building relationships, building connection. And that is what audience building is about. So I love that. I love the fact that you kind of phrase it that way, because I was just going to ask you, because you mentioned luck a couple of times. That was exactly what I was going to go for. Do you think you're making your own luck, or you're providing a way for it to strike? But that is what you do by building an audience. And I want to talk to you about guest posting, because that is something that I've never done before, because I've always had my own blog and I just posted there. But I wonder, would you still do this today if you were to build an audience? Would you still go into guest posting, or would you do that?
I think so. I don't know. I would definitely do it to try it. I don't know how blogs have changed, because this was it seems like quite a long time ago that I was doing guest posting. And I know I myself subscribed to a lot more blogs than I do now. I would definitely do it again. And the reason is, I think guest posting actually was the thing that accelerated what I do now the most. Because what I did was, I had my own blog and I'd write articles for it. And I wrote an article that I thought, oh, wow, this is really good. Humble as always. And I thought, I don't want to just put this on my blog because I don't really have much of an audience. This is such a good article. This needs to go elsewhere. So I went to my favorite blog, this is the blog that I always wanted to be published on, which was Smashing Magazine at the time. And I just Googled Smashing Magazine Write for Us to see if they even accepted guest posts. They did. And I submitted it to them, and I just forgot about it. And I thought, well, if they take it, amazing. If they don't, I'll just publish it on my own, and maybe I can just get some traction myself manually. And they ended up really liking it, and they published it, and it ended up being their #1 read article for like a year, a really, really long time. Like I had so many screenshots, I kept going back. It's not there anymore. This was years ago. But then from that, I then ended up speaking at different conferences. So like Smashing Conference, I did a different guest post elsewhere on a website called SitePoint, and I got picked up from there. They liked my article to speak at a conference in London, and then other conferences then picked me up from that. And it just sort of spiraled, and guest posting out of everything that I did was the thing that launched it much faster than anything else. So I would definitely do it again. But again, I don't know how much it's changed, so it would be more of an experiment than anything.
Well, I know that Smashing Magazine is still around. Not so sure about SitePoint, but like that definitely is still there. I read that like when I started coding, I was very interested in the front end design phase of it as well. So that I was a regular reader of that too, because they also had a great design on their own website, which was very indicative of their capacity to provide me with adequate design information. So I'm very impressed that you got there and that you got such good results. The one thing that I'm impressed most with here is that you overcame your inner demon to actually submit it. I think that's the hardest part. Like writing a great post is already hard, but then thinking that it is great and being humble, like you are, and then still submitting it to somebody else. That, I feel, that is the hardest part at all. Well, can you take me to your internal monologue or your internal dialogue, I guess, and how you convinced yourself to actually submit it?
The way I managed to do this, and I've done it for other things that I felt like I am not good enough to do, is I don't tell anyone that I'm doing it. And that makes me feel better, because I'm like, if this doesn't happen, then nobody's then going to ask me, oh, hey, that thing that you were really excited about that you submitted, did you get it? And because that's the worst part for me, is having to say no and then feel a bit embarrassed. So I would submit it, but I didn't tell anyone. And then I've done it other times at conferences that I've particularly wanted to speak at, and I don't tell anyone. And that just makes me feel better, because it's like, well, if it doesn't go the way I want, then I'm the only one who knows. But if you don't do it, then you never know. Like, it's worth a try. And to be honest, I tend to do it on more of a whim. Tends to be like in the evening for some reason, and I just think, just do it. And then I just do it really quickly, and then it's done. And I forget about it, honestly. And I really do forget that I did it. And that's definitely helped me. That's
cool. The fact that you know when in the day you're gonna have this energy level that you can actually do it. That's just being really smart about yourself, like knowing your body, knowing your physical state. I think we could all benefit from having a bit more introspection, understanding how we work, and then leveraging that to get results like that, right? To overcome our inhibitions, like silence the imposter syndrome for a minute just to hit submit. I think that's that level of just reflection. That is something you need to work on. That's a muscle almost that you need to train. I think this is cool. I think this is as much as it's antithetical to my build in public approach to everything, not talking about it until you get a result, perfectly fine. If that works for you, if that allows you to do the thing that you need to do to make progress, absolutely okay. That is cool. Would you? Are you building your audience in different ways beyond the podcast at this point, and beyond the guest posts that you probably still benefit from a little bit, right? Like there's probably still some traffic coming in from these older things.
Yeah, so it's changed a little bit now in that with Client Portal is my main thing that I do. And my audience comes mostly just straight from Google organic search. And it's because people are searching specifically for a client portal for WordPress, and that's another stroke of luck that I had, is I named it Client Portal, which was super lucky, because apparently people were searching for that. Yeah, and there wasn't a lot of competition. There's more competition now, but I sort of got there first. That was not intentional?
That was not an intentional choice?
No, it was just I had to sell it. When I said earlier that I had this, I mentioned this product and people said they wanted to buy it. I sort of jumped on that really quickly, and I didn't have time to think about a name. And I think if I had time to think about a name, I would have named it something really cool, but like not useful at all. I don't know, like it would be some 4-letter name that the domain would be really expensive. But I was like, oh, it's a portal for your clients. It's Client Portal, and that's just how the name came about, and that ended up being like a really good name for it. And you know, I feel like my gut instinct can, and I think everyone's as well, not just mine, but I think your gut instinct, if you listen to it and if you're in tune to it, it's right a lot of the time if you don't overthink things. I think anytime I've overthought anything, it's probably not completely true, but a lot of the time when I overthink, it ends up not being as good as I would have thought. So yeah, that was really fortunate that I named it Client Portal. But yeah, so most of my traffic now comes straight from Google search. And I'm actually, at this point, I'm having to pivot a little bit because I was originally targeting freelancers and agencies, but because it's not necessarily freelancers and agencies that are finding Client Portal. It's, you know, law firms and accountants and marine biologists and furniture salesmen, like all these different things. I'm in a little bit of a tricky stage now where I feel like I'm pivoting, but I don't exactly know what I'm going to do next to continue to build my audience, or even who my audience is anymore, because my audience is now so many different people. So that's the struggle I have. I think I still focus on freelancers, agencies, and I still try to write. I still go on podcasts. I still do all that stuff that's historically worked for me, because I enjoy talking to those people, and I feel like I can help them. I'm not sure how much I could help a law firm, to be honest, maybe a little bit with the project management side, but I've got experience in these other areas, so I feel like I can be helpful there. And I just sort of try to stay on the radar somewhere, just because I enjoy it and I think that I should be. But yeah, it's an interesting time at the minute, actually, for the audience building.
It's super interesting. Like, you have lawyers on the one side and marine biologists on the other one. So you have the coolest people and the least cool people. No shame. But that does it reflect on the actual product as well? Like, do you see this being problematic, that you have so many very divergent audiences that might need different things from one product that you offer?
Yeah, so it is difficult because a lot of the terminology that I use is speaking to freelancers and agencies, and it makes things difficult. Like if I have certain lead magnets, for example, to get people on my email list, they're targeting freelancers and agencies, and it's difficult to find something that could speak to everyone in the same way. So I'm sort of picking the biggest 5 different industries that I've got, and I'm going to be trying to create different like email courses and different lead magnets and all this stuff, case studies for those different 5. And I think the 5 that I've chosen are different enough that other people outside of those industries could still benefit. It's going to take a lot of time though to get all that set up, because it's even just doing one industry is quite a lot of work. But that's my plan at the minute, and then using website personalization to try to infer who they are and try to push them more down the route that I think they would most benefit from.
Yeah, I guess you have an expert for website personalization somewhere pretty close to you, right?
Yeah, everyone says though I should be much better at it than I am, because I had people I've had people like look at my website, not my new website, but my old website, and they're like, you know who you're married to, right? Like, why aren't you doing this? This is like the number one thing you should be doing. But yeah, it's kind of embarrassing how far behind I am with that. But that is my plan, and I'm very lucky that I have like a consultant on tap for that.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's a great approach. I remember this from my own journey with Feedback Panda. We kind of looked into it, but we decided against it because the market we were in was just exploding size-wise. So we didn't need to look into alternative niches. But we had a couple on our radar, and we thought, we would have to do all these things, like build funnels for these specific people that are in a completely different medium than our online teachers that we were serving with our product, right? If you, like, nurses need documentation too, and Feedback Panda was a documentation tool, but nurses don't necessarily hang out in the closed community that our teachers hang out in, right? We would have to go to Facebook or Instagram and whatnot and develop whole new distribution channels or funnels for this. I don't envy you the work that is ahead of you, but I think it's awesome that you have understood where your potential customer segments are and that you're going after them. Like each of them with a specific approach. I think that is the way to funnel them to a product. There is no way that you can have one message that fits everybody. It's quite the opposite of what personalization is about, right? Like to think that you have this generic way of reaching people. So yeah, I really, really like this as an audience building move. That is a professional audience around your business, though. For your personal audience, like for you as a person, are you gonna keep building that out as well in public, or is it just business audience for you?
Yeah, so I think that's where I would be growing my audience. Really, is I do want to have a bit more of a personal brand. I just don't know, because I have so many different things going on, and people know me from different places. It's all a little bit everywhere. So I'm not exactly sure at this point who I really want to target for my own personal brand. I think it tends to be freelancers, agencies, and still honestly mostly developers, to be honest. But again, there's just so many different people. This is more difficult for me in a way because I don't want to leave anyone out. But like you said, you end up diluting the message if you talk to too many people at the same time, and then splitting things out is so much work. Like it's just, and if you don't do it right, you might as well have not done it at all, I think. So yeah, my personal brand, that is a little bit more tricky, and I'm not focused too much on it, to be honest, other than doing the things that I'm already doing, like just trying to connect with people. I'm hopefully trying to stay relevant and that kind of thing. And I guess I'm kind of waiting for something to make sense. I feel like it will. I feel like there'll be some kind of answer as to what I do at some point. But yeah, right now I'm just enjoying it. And yeah, I've got that. I think, yeah, freelancers, agencies, developers is sort of my niche, I would say, for my personal brand.
I think it's a fun niche where a lot of interesting things intersect, right? Like you as a founder, as a non-tech founder too, like playing that angle as well. It's just everybody wants to have success doing the things that they do well. And I think you're a person that shows that with perseverance and setting up things that work for you, you can get there over time. And hey, even if you don't know right now what it is, I'm going to be following you along that journey to see where you'll end up. And I think this is a great opportunity to just ask you, where can everybody else, people who are listening to this podcast, follow you along that journey? Where would you like them to connect with you?
Yeah, so I think the best place is probably Twitter. So that's where I spend most of my time online when I'm not working. So you can find me at Laurium, which is Laurium. And if you want to check out the Non-Tech Founders podcast, we're still early days, but we're just about to record a bunch of new episodes. You can find it. It's the nontechfounderspodcast.com, I think. I feel like I should know that URL, but I don't. And yeah, I'm really excited about that because actually, just to go back on my whole audience thing, the other new set of people that I'm really enjoying talking to are people who want to do something similar to what I do, which is maybe go from services to products or like build a product business. I really enjoy talking about that, things like audience building and seeing what people are up to and that kind of thing. So yeah, you can check out the podcast there. But yeah, just say hi on Twitter. I'm pretty personable. Say hi back.
I recommend both following you on Twitter and subscribing to the podcast, because I do both, and it's been quite an interesting journey. Like, your podcast is amazing. It's in my rotation already, like my dog walking rotation, where I take the puppy out and I listen to people talk about their problems. It's always interesting. So that is a great podcast. I hope that you get a lot of subscribers over the next couple months and years, hopefully for a long, long time.
Thank you.
So yeah, thank you so much for sharing everything you shared today, sharing your journey, sharing your insights. That was really nice, and I wish you the very best. Thanks so much.
Of course. Thank you so much.
And that's it for today. Thank you for listening to The Bootstrap Founder. You can find me on Twitter at Arvidkahl, ARVIDKAHL, and you'll find my books and my Twitter course there as well. If you want to support me and the show, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. get the podcast in your podcast player of choice and leave a rating and a review by going to ratethispodcast.com/founder. Any of this will help the show. So thank you very much for listening and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.